Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of the LawServe Tech Talk series by IDEX Legal in collaboration with Provigil. This is a monthly series where we invite a leading general counsel to come and discuss the world of technology from the in-house perspective. And joining the general counsel of the month is Shashwat, co-founder of Provigil. To date, we've covered the following discussions: the role of technology in future-proofing your department, the evolution of technology tools for the in-house counsel, legal tech and the banking and finance industry, the legal tech journey, understanding the process of building a tech roadmap as an in-house counsel. Last month, we covered contract legal management tools and the legal department. And today, we'll be discussing critical challenges for the in-house department and business, focusing around compliance management tools. If you'd like to watch any of our previous sessions, then you can see them on our IDEX Legal YouTube channel. Joining us to dissect the topic around compliance management today, we have Shashwat bin Ali, Global General Counsel and Chief Compliance Officer for a KKR portfolio company, Resustainability Limited. Shashwat is a graduate in Commerce and Law, fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, and a Master's in Law with a specialization in dispute resolution, mediation, and international commercial arbitration. Shashwat's got 21 years of corporate legal experience in leading MNCs of diverse sectors like pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, software, IT-enabled services, and professional services sectors. He's overseen governance, regulatory, corporate secretarial legal, ethics and compliance functions, and a key member of the board providing strategic legal oversight and operational legal support for businesses, and a well-recognized and acknowledged member of the GC fraternity in India. We also have Shashwat, co-founder of Provigil. Shashwat is an experienced business development professional, passionate about sales, marketing, and growth at startups. He loves engaging with people, problem solving, and being a catalyst for building new products and businesses. He's currently building Provigil, a legal tech startup focused on transforming legal operations for enterprises. Provigil offers the next generation tools for digital contracting, litigation, IP, and compliance management. It's a new age legal operations management suite for enterprises, providing a single integrated SaaS system for legal teams to manage all aspects of legal operations. The platform's equipped with advanced ML, AI capabilities for intelligent document review, IP watch and search, case law research, and other use cases, and is trusted by over 200 companies and 100+ law firms. Welcome aboard, Shashwat and Shashwat. And Shashwat, especially, I know you're in Singapore and it's evening time, so thanks for taking part.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're going to get Shashwat to you first, because you've been around, a few years now as an in-house counsel in India. And we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that back around 2005, when you started looking at compliance management, you had to build your own kind of hack of a solution using Outlook, for task and reminder management. Going back, almost those 20 years, why did you feel the need to build something, as a young in-house lawyer back then?
Sure. Thanks, because I think, back in those days, what really happened was, there were some non-compliances, which we really, found out, in terms of our assessments. And, of course, some of those non-compliances had some kind of a the business impact and all of those typical other aspects, right? And while we resolved those issues there, I think the thought process within the leadership and within our team was why did that happen? I mean, how can we avoid this in the future? That was the thought. And when we tried to dig down the issues, the key thing what we found out was, I mean, it is largely with respect to mapping the responsibility, largely accountability issue, a little bit of awareness aspect, right? And at the same time, sometimes people may not know the risk of that aspect, risk of the non-compliance, and various other things. I mean, typically, whenever we try to do a root cause assessment of non-compliance, I mean, when we know there are so many functions, and when there is no clear-cut accountability or mapping and ownership, things go a little haywire and say, oh, this is your job, this is my job, and all of that stuff. I mean, So when we evaluated all these things, what I thought at the point of the time, that I think there has to be a clear, system or a mapping wherein we identify all the compliances, map the respective person, respective department, and also create a accountability even further up. There has to be right escalations, so that there is no surprise, and all of that. Of course, this could have been done in an Excel file, back then, right? But what we thought is that there should be a robust mechanism. Things has to be automatic. It can't be a people dependent one, and not a, it should be a process. When we thought through, uh, at that time there was no tools. There were hardly one or two player, which were there. So we did use a software called eRoom, which is more of a project management tool, which actually gives the same features, like it has a task, it has a reminder function, and has an integration to the email. We talked about the mapping. So we actually, used that project management tool, which our project, folks were using, uh, and mix this compliances and try to create a hack wherein reminders were given, to the right people, and escalations were going on, and all of that. Of course, it didn't had a great graphic user interface in terms of reporting and all. It served the purpose of people getting reminded. And of course, one of the reasons of non-compliance also, as simple as it may sound, people just forget. People just don't get reminded of doing particular thing, and that way the delay can happen. So it was more of a awareness system, reminders and escalations, and that was a hack which we done long back in 2005. But the reasons are pretty much the same. If you ask someone why they want to really do a compliance management tool, it's still the same reason. Of course, we'll talk more as the conversation goes around, but that was a thought in 2005. Yeah.
So, so just kind of fast forwarding to today, we're in 2022 now. So how has that thought process changed, and how has the compliance management space evolved as well? And then how is it supporting you as a GC and CCO, today versus what it was doing nearly 20 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you see, things are different and definitely evolved a lot. I mean, today, whether you're thinking from a board perspective or a shareholder's perspective, or even for that matter, when you really want to attract the investments from a private equity, or any of the investors, or from the banks or financial institutions, I think the number one question definitely all the stakeholders is focusing on, or how is the compliance management systems are there, how it is effective and efficient. I think this is an important area, and the boards and the audit committees, the risk management committees, and of course we'll talk more the ESG committees. Everyone is really focusing on the compliance approach, and non-compliance is something which is really taken more seriously, I would say. And for this, imagine an organization which has 70 subsidiaries, which has like some 100 factories, so many offices, multiple geographies. How is a board, or how is a shareholders or anyone can really get comfort, right? And it has become more imperative now. It was there earlier, but it has become even more now, to have a clear-cut, robust technology-based solution which can give that kind of a comfort to all the stakeholders. Uh, and I think there are so many tools which have come up now. I mean, back then there was not many tools, but today I must say the market is flooded with so many tools. I'm sure Shashwat will have more idea, but there are hundreds of such players now. I'm so glad that there are so many options for the legal fraternity, for the governance professional fraternity, to pick and choose a particular tool. And this definitely gives a comfort to the board. I mean, from a Companies Act standpoint, the board has to make a director's responsibility statement which says that the company has a proper compliance management system which is robust, effective, and efficient. To give that statement, it's not a mere statement. It has to be really backed up by a proper process and technology and the right people to man it, and all the more relevant at this point of a time. And if you see the usage, I think pretty much, large listed companies, or large multinational companies are actually started, deploying one tool or the another tool, whether it is in-house or from any of the large players. Yeah, so I think that has really changed the game. At this point of a time, it is no more the good thing, but it has become a must thing, is what I must say. I think I've seen the conversations in multiple forums, but I think now we see pretty much every large organization willing to invest in technology. I think uh, it is absolutely critical now. I'm sure Shashwat will add more. You leveraging technology, digital is something absolutely about conversations now. I have been organizations, and no conversation goes without talking about how we can automate things, how we can use tools, or how you can use digital and all of that in all the processes. From that standpoint, I think it becomes much easier for the GC and the governance professionals to start adopting technology. It has become much easier, I would say. Earlier I think there was always a cost issues and all of that, but I think now it's not that difficult to propose any tool. So things have changed rather significantly because of the areas which I've suggested, because of the importance, and more importantly, you have seen some of the consequences of non-compliances and all of these aspects. I mean, ESG will talk about it a little later, though. So I think it created an ecosystem wherein the businesses and the stakeholders needs to get that kind of a comfort, and having a process backed by right technology is a critical thing, and we have a lot of players as well. So things have changed significantly currently, in my view.
Yeah, super. I mean, Shashwat, I'll bring you in because obviously you've been in the legal tech domain for a few years now, and obviously pivoted from where you were at law firm to now focusing on in-house, and you're kind of really developing a comprehensive suite for the in-house counsel. What have and we know that compliance management is a big challenge to solve for not just Indian companies but companies everywhere, and compliance and regulations and the kind of judicial kind of punishments that come down on directors now is severe. So it's very much top of mind for the in-house counsel and the business. But what's your kind of take on the evolution of the compliance management tool, and the kind of challenges we're still facing in trying to find the right product for for the GC?
Yeah. No, so I think I want to take a step back and take a little bit of a macro view on this, right? I mean, in terms of how compliance, what is the relevance of compliance going forward, where we were and where we are headed, right? So if you look at the last few decades, right? I mean, let's go back 2-3 decades, right? I mean, there was barely any technology. There was barely any technology that was used by businesses, right? Technology was an expensive, commodity, right? Not a commodity, right? Technology was not a commodity. Technology was expensive. Only the very large businesses could afford, right? In fact, the entire government machinery lacked any sort of technology, right? So everything that you had to, every interface that you had with the government, right, was very pen and paper, very, a lot of red carpet, lot of a lot of effort to get anything done, right? If you fast forward to today, right, two things are happening, right? One, technology, the cost of using tech in your business has come down considerably, right? And at this point, it is not just the very large companies who can afford to use tech. Today, most of the young companies are born because they can use tech, right? I mean, so that is one, right? If you look at the government itself, right? I mean, if you see the initiatives that the governments all over the world, right? And again, in India also, I believe that, we're doing this in a big way, right? Is the government machinery is being made technology enabled in a big way, right? You look at tax compliance, the reason why our tax compliance has gone up, right, in the last few years, right, is because of, digitization of services at the government's end, right? So there is a huge shift that is happening where technology, because the government is also realizing that, they can actually use technology to pick up holes and, how businesses were misusing it. Again, it's a slightly negative intonation, but if you look at, the age-old businesses, right, they thrived because they could really play the system really well, right? But because they knew, in a tough regulatory environment, if you had if you understood the right ways and means of doing the business, right, whether you were compliant or not was not the question, right? Whether you knew how to manage the system, all of those things were a competitive advantage, right? Because when you were working on pen and paper, you could go back and change the date on which something was done, right? Things could be adjusted, right? But in today's day and age and where we are headed, right, as an economy, as a new age businesses, right, there is extremely high reliance on the use of technology. It is going to be very difficult for businesses to operate by not being compliant and then managing it at the end of the year, right? Those techniques and those things have to go away, right? And while all of us know that the biggest piece of change that is required is the government to simplify the regulatory structure and make it easy for businesses to exist, right? But again, at the end of the day, you still have to exist in the framework of what the laws of the land permit you to do, right? So we believe that at least for the next decade or two, there is going to be flux, right? While we will see some regulatory improvements, right? It will be a tightly regulated environment where technology will have to be used as a lever, right? So businesses will have to use technology very intelligently to make sure that, they are more compliant and being more compliant, right? And Shujat mentioned ESG, right? I mean, today ESG is such a big stock price mover, right? I mean, if you look at stock price movements, there's such a strong correlation with ESG today, right? It is something that the global community values greatly, right? The investor community values greatly, right? So, and that is what you're seeing, right? Companies at a very young stage are investing in compliance. They realize that it's going to be a big priority and it's going to happen in a big way. And so that I feel is happening, and that is why I feel for companies like us and people trying to solve for compliance, a great opportunity. But again, it's a hard and dusty road ahead, right? Compliance, especially in the Indian context, just to solve it really well is a very challenging problem. Again, information from government institutions, the regulatory hierarchy and structure is complex, right? Interpretation is required when it comes to law. It is not black and white, right? So cost of doing it is also high, right? So for young companies trying to build compliance solutions, it is a hard one to crack, right? And there has to be a very strong mix between command over data and technology, right? I mean, so data in the sense that understanding the scope of compliances, right, for different industries, that's a data problem in my view, right? That's an extremely hard data problem. And second is, how do you build the software layer around it, right? Which is a relatively easier problem, but then that is the solutions which will do well, which will adapt well to companies today will solve both, right? In the data problem and the software problem, right? But it's a great opportunity, and I feel that's the way forward, right? Most companies have to start investing in compliance. I believe it's a largely unsolved problem. I don't see compliance being we've spoken to Shujat. I'm sure if he asks his views, he can probably pen down a book on it, right? On what needs to change. But as service providers, again, we are aware of the challenges and how complex the task ahead is when it comes to compliance. And I find it very exciting, right? I mean, because there's so much to do. And yeah, I mean, I believe the next decade or so, there's going to be a lot of innovation in this space. A lot of challenges need to be solved. And yeah, so looking forward to what's going to happen in the next few years.
Yeah, I think you've kind of got it spot on, Shashwat, in terms of, compliance is a big issue anyway, and it's evolving all the time, evolving in terms of more and more compliance hitting businesses. And, and when you put the India angle on it, it's every day some new regulations coming up across some sector, across there's some issue. And even when you were managing it offline, it was a big issue. And now even with the kind of online systems that are in place, it's a big challenge and a big headache for GCs like Shashwat to keep on top of this stuff. So and then just like you said, it's a big challenge to solve, and we still don't have any kind of tech provider that's on top of this, because it's such an evolving landscape. But stepping back from we're trying to advise the in-house counsel, what kind of recommendations would you give to legal departments? Because I'm sure you get asked all the time, can you solve, do you have an effective compliance management tool that would manage all compliances across all sectors, etc.? So, what kind of advice do you give to GCs and in-house counsel with regards to starting that process?
So I think so two things, right? One is, I think whoever is trying to evaluate, right, you have to be clear about what you're trying to evaluate, right? So if you look at compliance solutions out there in the market, right, trying to solve compliance, there is a spectrum, right? So there is a spectrum of people in the market who are specialists as compliance service providers, and then there is pure play technology solutions, right? So there is a spectrum of that, right? So you would have really strong service providers who've been in the industry for 2-3 decades, right? Or there could be tech providers, right, who've built a tech oriented business, right? Now, as a company, your needs could be very different, right? So I think especially with compliance, one needs to really define well of what their main purpose with implementing a system is, right? And let's say if your system is, if your problem is that you are not aware of what compliance is, right? The company at different levels, there is a lack of understanding and awareness of the overall compliance framework in which the company has to operate. Then you're better suited going more towards compliance service providers, right? Who who specialize more in that, right? If let's say there are companies we've come across who have very strongly, neatly understood framework, but because of their size and scale, they need the right technology to implement that, right? Then you have to evaluate service providers which are doing tech really well, right? Unfortunately, again, and this is myself, we've been working in this space. I still haven't come across vendors or providers in this space who specialize in both equally well, right? So some are doing tech well, some are doing services well. Our approach at ProKeel has been that we work with the providers, right, as partners, because we believe that we can do tech really well, and then we will work with people who have 2-3 decades of industry experience, right? But as a buyer, right, if you're going out in the market looking for a solution, I think what is important is to have your objectives clear, and in that framework then evaluate the right player, right? Because what might be the right player for somebody else might not be the right player. So ProKeel might be a great solution for Shashwat, but because Shashwat has spent 2 decades, he understands the framework, he just needs a good tech solution, let's say. And there might be another GC, right? Who's or a compliance officer whose objective could be different, whose positioning at this point could be different. So they need to evaluate it differently, right? And there is a spectrum, so you will find, right? So that is my one big takeaway, right? Don't go for big brands and who's the best, or just recommendations. Evaluate it for yourself, right? And take that approach. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, super. And it's good, the kind of distinction you're making between, we still don't have a real provider that can cross over and provide an all-encompassing solution. So take it one step at a time and understand your objectives of what you're trying to achieve. I think that's, it's a very commonsensical approach, but it gets missed a lot because we get so involved with simply getting a tech solution on board. Shashwat, from your experience, what, and the kind of learnings you have now of trying to build, compliance management tools into the various businesses that you've operated at, what recommendations, would you give to your younger self, right? So, and other department and other peers about what they should do and what you would have done if you were young, starting again, with regards to implementing a compliance management tool?
Yeah. So I think as Shashwat said, identifying the, what exactly is the current problem, and accordingly, work. There could be some organizations, which possibly need only technology, some organizations which possibly need both. we generally see a trend, wherein companies need both. I mean, that is something what they want. I mean, we are aware of compliances, but there could be something else which we are not aware. I mean, the assumption that the organizations know all the laws applicable is not good assumption in my view. What I've seen across organizations. So that is one aspect. And secondly, if you see the definition of a compliance, I think that is an important. I mean, most of the times, I think the focus is around the legal compliances, but the word compliance in an organization is becoming broader and broader. Apart from legal compliances, now the focus is also on the contractual compliances, also on some of the contractual, the SLAs, specifically on policies, as internal company policy compliances. Every department of using the word compliance. The IT department, they're all talking about all data security compliances and all. I mean, it may not be mandated by law, but by virtue of internal SOPs, guidelines, and all, they all call it as IT compliance. HR, of course, has various other policies, right? Just like the legislative. I mean, even the companies have various the policies, procedures as well. Along with that, a lot of contracts as well. So it is very important for the GC or a compliance officer as to define the scope, because from a board standpoint, then suddenly, oh, is this not covered? I mean, because the word compliance is so broad, so that brings the larger picture to the whole compliance. Which includes ethics related policies, SOPs, standards and guidelines. And a lot of companies go for certifications, and all of them come back with a lot of conditions and compliance and all of that. I mean, who tracks that? So the moment we talk about some of the compliance management systems and legal compliance, a lot of folks say, oh, we actually want all of these. I mean, why are we only talking about legal compliance? It has to be broadened. So again, the need assessment at the beginning is pretty important, and accordingly we need to go ahead and find the right partner, and the right partner is absolutely important from a implementation standpoint. Now, of course, there are some other points and challenges which are there in the existing systems and all. I mean, we'll cover as we move on. I do have some points as well.
I mean, have you managed to find a kind of like a compliance management tool that is, like Shashwat's mentioned, it's pretty difficult at the moment to have an all-encompassing one, but have you had any luck in terms of trying to find the right provider that can deal with the kind of compliance challenge you have, or do you have to have multiple kind of providers supporting you?
No, I think we have some of the players, but I think that it's like the dil mange more from that standpoint. I mean, if you ask me, what exactly a futuristic tool should look like, there are a lot of areas. For example, I think a lot of tools which I have seen, at least, I mean, the user interface has to significantly change a lot. I mean, when you see some of the new tools and all, I mean, specifically in some other areas, I mean, when I look back, I think the user interface has to change. The reports also have to be little different. The dependency on the event-based compliance. I mean, the focus is all on the timely compliances. I think that is all taken care. But the biggest area is event-based compliances, and most of the players say, oh, you know what, event-based compliance, and you just need to activate at appropriate time and all. I think that gets missed a lot, and in my view, I think this is an area of a lot of focus, because the time-based compliances are kind of done well, but most of the organizations do corporate actions and a lot of decisions which are taken as part of the business growth and all, and that means that there is a constant upgradation, or the constant invoking of the event-based compliances. So I think again there is a lot of dependency on the internal team. The risk of missing out on those event-based compliances is quite high. And also from a mapping standpoint, mapping the applicable laws, some of the players largely depend on, oh, you just need to tell me the form, ask the right questions, and based on the questions answered, the applicable laws are identified. What I feel is that, a lot of ground has to be covered at that assessment stage, because sometimes business may not know, and if the player doesn't ask right questions, there is a possibility of the system missing several applicable laws and compliances, and we end up in a situation saying that, oh, we do have a system, but oh, this is event based, it's not covered. Oh, this law is not covered. Oh, these compliances are missed out. Then we end up with a question. Oh, I mean, again, coming back to the effectiveness and the efficiency, and more importantly, the reportings as well. I think it has to be more, robust, or at the same time, should be more user friendly. There is no point in generating Excel, then converting the data and all of that. So I think there are a lot of such areas which are there, which some of the the players and the companies have to work towards these challenges. Of course, there is still a long way to go. I'll come to it little later on, the integrated tool approach. I'll share with you what I mean by integrated tool approach.
Yeah, you touched upon trying to figure out the effectiveness of tech tools there, Shashwat. So can you talk a bit more about, how do you kind of measure, justify, the effectiveness and ROI from some of the tech tools that are out in the market and you might be using within the business?
Yeah, see, one definitely is the internal clients, feedback and the survey, what you do from, because ultimately the tool is deployed across all the functions, across all the businesses, right? And when they, give the feedback and if they see lesser miss outs, for those non-compliances and, ultimately the smoothing of the operations, I think, that gives a, good, tool. I mean, you can go back and say, in year 2019, 2020, 21, these have been the incidences or these have been the non-compliances, or that's the kind of an impact what the company had, and measure the data, post implementation. I think that will give a, good, view about the effectiveness and, usage of the tool. And of course, the comfort, of course, there are various statutory audits, internal audits, and, all of that. Whether the observations have reduced on this count, I think that clearly gives a data with respect to the return on investment with respect to these tools. Yeah.
I mean, Shashwat, how would you add to that? Because obviously it's easy to make the purchasing decision at a level to bring in a tech tool, and then you bring it to the business, and and you've got to then justify to the business the purchase decision. But how do you really kind of measure the effectiveness of the tool, and looking at, is it really adding ROI to the business?
So no, it's an important question, and we've been also trying to deal and answer this question, right? I mean, it's hard to answer this question very effectively because end of the day there is a lot of subjectivity to compliance as well, right? In terms of how you measure it, and see, you can measure and improve something only when you have a benchmark to measure and improve against it, right? So one of the key challenges that I see most companies face, right, is there is no benchmark to measure, right? So our recommendation in terms of tech adoption across legal today, right? It's not just compliance, it is also disputes, is also contracts, is, see, you can only talk about ROI, right, once you start measuring and seeing things, right? So the problem today is in legal functions, most things are not measured, right? Having an approach where things are measured, tags are measured, deviations are measured, right? And again, they're simple reporting, right? Not everything needs a monetary value, right? But just simple reporting on things, right? I mean, if let's say today I'll paint a simple proposition, right? Let's say I am the GC for a company, right? And if I am able to implement a tool which gives my management a bird's eye view of what are the different compliances that are applicable on the company by function, by division, by region, by unit, right? And have a clear mapping in the platform, right? As where different levels of management can view, right? Having that system, right? I don't need to put in a justification. I think in today's day and age, that is a must have for any business, right? Where there is complete visibility into what is happening. It's not a black box, right? I mean, most, legal and compliance related discussions, I have heard is, right, I mean, where companies were used to legal being, a function which was operating in a silo, where anything that was related to the government or which was unknown related to the laws was sent to that office, and nobody else in the company knew anything about it, right? That's not how businesses operate today, right? Everything, these are very core to how you take business decisions. I mean, I have been on business side of things in other companies as well, and you have to have the legal, tax, compliance view before making your business plans, right? So having clearly visible, compliances across the business is a good starting point. From here on, you can start then measuring whether what you are using, what are you missing out on, right? I think that is a prerogative of the in-house team to figure out, right? Whichever tool you deploy, that as Siddharth mentioned, right? I mean, one of the big laments, right, of GCs is that these tools are very hard to use, right? It's just very difficult from an interface standpoint to explain to business that what is happening, right? So that's a big opportunity ahead of us, right? Where if we can give that visibility, I think that's a great starting point to start measuring things, right? And then you can build on it, right? In terms of an ROI assessment standpoint, right? I think, again, purely from a technology standpoint, if I talk about one or two things that Shujat mentioned, right? Event-based compliances he mentioned, right? I believe, right? I mean, any tool, right? Any tech tool that you're using within the legal function should have great customizability, right? Because every business is different, right? No two businesses are the same. No two pharma companies are the same, right? They have the same set of laws to follow, but they're different organisms. They have different org structures. They have different, totally different processes internally. So if the tool is not customizable, right, where the interface, the workflows, everything has to be customizable to the business, right? That I think is a key priority from a technology standpoint with these tools, right? And I think that is one of the key things that we work on at ProVokill, right? Whether it is any part of our legal ops product, right? We try to make sure that reporting customizability, because only then the legal function is even in a position to talk about ROIs, right? I mean, how do you even talk about ROIs when you have nothing measured, right? So today we work with so many legal departments where before they implemented ProVokill, they did not even knew the exact count of litigation going on against them. They did not know the amount of legal fees paid by them in a year, right? They did not know how much money they spent on a case, right? Right. So simple things, right? Now, again, sounding things that sound simple, right? But these are a must-have, right? Because every other department in your company is functioning that way, and so has legal, right? I mean, legal has to adopt those ways and means, right? And I think so customizability and great interfaces, right? Great reporting and interfaces are a must, right? If the tool doesn't have it, then it is just a data dump, right? It's just a data repository where you have information sitting, right? And I think in 2022, I think we as service providers and GCs both can aspire for more, can ask for more, right? I mean, in terms of tech product availability.
Yeah, a great point. And I think obviously that when you're coming from the tech business, wider business point of view, you kind of give a good perspective of what the in-house department, or anyone purchasing technology might miss. It's like, okay, great, let's get this tool in because it will solve all my problems, but you haven't really thought through the process of where it's really what it's going to solve for the business. Shujat, I mean, Shashwat was then talking about the difficulties that because it's so, compliance is so diverse within every business, forget about within the same sector, even within the same sector, there's so many different issues to solve. And, we haven't still evolved to that point where each in-house department is trying to figure out, this is the business challenge, this is what I want the tool for. So it's very much up to the individual GC to figure that out. And that's not taught, right? It's very much GCs trying to figure this stuff out. And I'm sure you must deal with this issue at times that, you've brought a tool into the business, you've implemented a tech tool, and then somewhere you've got people saying to you, hey, we've got this compliant tool, how did we miss that compliance, deadline or timeline? How did we suddenly miss that? And they start blaming the tool for, not working. So, how do you deal with that challenge of having, an expensive, fancy tool and yet missing out on, important, compliance issues?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely a challenge, as Shashwat did mention. I think that one of the aspects is of the customizations. So most of these issues come for some gaps in the implementation level. I mean, the company is in hurry, that the tech player is in hurry, that okay, we need to roll this out. Initial questionnaires are sent. The questionnaires are responded, but sometimes there is not a clear cut discussion. I mean, I would feel that the players actually have to really understand business well, should visit some of these factories, some of these sites, see for themselves, right? And then some of those issues of miss outs will be reduced. That's number one. So that while implementation, spending a little bit more time would definitely help. And as you all know, one of the main challenges is that a lot of these teams and functions have so many tools already. That is another challenge altogether. They have a SAP system, they have a HR system, they have a time and expense. I mean, it goes on and on. And oh, this is another work. I mean, oh my God, I need to spend more time on this. You want me to spend so many compliances, I have to attach things and all of that. I mean, there is a acceptability issue also. I mean, no matter how strong the tone at the top is, and we all do at a ground level, there's an acceptability issue is there. And whenever things like this comes in, and things starts going haywire, and blame game starts. Oh, I mean, we spent so much of money, we spent so much of time, we're doing a lot of work, but still it got missed out. And it kind of creates a challenge internally to push for more adaptation. So these things do happen, and there will always be a teething issues. But a key point is, whenever these issues come up, and it's very important for the company, the organization, and also the player to come back and quickly resolve those issues, add those the updates, or map those tools the properly, and constantly work on making easy the things. And I think that's where some of the players have a challenge as to, oh, you're talking about customization, oh, this is not the scope. That all those dynamics start in wherein the customer, the company wants as part of the implementation, they realize something, right? And they're asking some more, and then the whole scope issues and all. I think wherein players also have to really work closely with the companies, more so in initial 1 year, because there is a lot of teething issues, a lot of things which are found out, and I think that's the way how we'll have to find. It's a difficult thing, but ultimately all of them have to work together and talk about these. But I think there is no way that you can actually go back. I know a lot of companies, they actually change the whole tools. I mean, imagine they took a lot of time, couple of more than 6 months to implement, and then actually working for that for 6 months and a year, and then they suddenly realize that, oh, I think this is not working, I'll go back to another tool. That would be a disaster for any GC to face that situation, right? So it's absolutely important whenever those challenges are there. I think the teams have to sit back and try to add the more updates, and try to solve those issues as well. There's no point you can abandon the system. A lot of companies, some of the companies, at least we have seen that after some time, if they see more problems, and if the reports are not coming well, there are more miss outs over a period of a time, slowly there is a risk of adaptability, the risk of not using that system, and that would be a big disaster. I'm sure Shashwat would have more examples around that. I want to hear actually from him as to what are some of the other clients come up with some of these issues and problems, and how do he solve those.
No, so Shiraj, when if I have to look back at our journey, right? I mean, it is because of those difficult situations that we have been within with our clients, that today we even have a working product today, right? I mean, because see, end of the day, we are, for instance, I'm an engineer by background, right? I mean, so as technologists or technology people, right, we understand how technology can be used, but the core business, right, or the core functional knowledge, right, still resides with experts, right? And so, for instance, when I come on these calls, right, I mean, in each of these webinar sessions, when I hear somebody like you speak, right, I'm actually taking notes, right, because a lot of those points are something which are valuable inputs to us, right, as a business, right? I mean, end of the day, we are solving it for you guys, right? And while there are times, right, you can't take each and every advice from the customer on its face value, because at times it is also not well thought of, right? But given 6 years in the industry now, we have also started developing a sense of how to filter it, right? So while we work with clients closely, there are a lot of customization requests come in. Some are valid, right? Most are valid, right? Some are absolutely invalid. They are where you know that the client is making the wrong decision, right? In the long term, they are optimizing for short term, ease of implementation and getting things through, rather than thinking really long term, right? So we obviously resist a lot of those changes. We make sure that again, if it's a larger product related decision, right, so we resist changes which we believe are not in the client's interest. But if you look at the evolution of our products, right, I mean, it is all because of inputs from our clients in terms of how we can make it better, right? And yeah, I mean, these situations, they get heated at times, right? I mean, there are different points of views, right? The idea, right, as a vendor, right, I mean, when I am sitting with a business implementing a system for them, right, one thing that I know for sure, right, if I end up implementing something that is my point of view and it is not understood by the company, right, is not understood by the business, this is not going to last, right? So if you have that view as a service provider, right, then you will be able to make those trade-offs, right? So there are times when our implementations, right, have overshot implementation timelines by over 100%, right? So if we had, let's say, budgeted 3 months, we ended up doing the implementation for 7 months, right? But those 4 months, right, was valuable lessons learned, right? I mean, really valuable lessons learned, right? And which helped new customers who came in, future customers who came in, right? And it has helped us evolve as service providers, right? I keep telling one of the key things that I keep reiterating, right? As service providers, right, a lot of the tech that we build is not for the customer, is for our internal teams on how to onboard customers better. You said you took examples like sending the wrong questionnaire, right? If you have the wrong inputs, you're going to give the wrong output, right? I mean, so in our company, right, with whatever products we do, right, we have honed those questionnaires over 6 years, and we were really wrong, right, when we started, right? But today I am for certain sure that the process that we have for implementation, it is one of the best in the country when it comes to tech products, right? Because of the fact that we understand that the way you have to engage with the customer, the amount of collaboration that is required between the customer and the service provider, right? So those things we've really worked hard upon to make that process simpler for the customer, to make that process more sort of pointed, in the sense that you're addressing the right issues, right? So that you don't have thorny issues opening up 2 months, 3 months down the line, right? So those are really important. And I mean, if I were to narrate stories, it could take us another hour for me to just talk about stories. But I think we have learned valuable lessons, and I think we have improved a lot as service providers, right, because of our customers' feedback, right? So you have to have an open. I mean, as a company, we are always developing our product, right? It is not that our product is developed and ready to ship, right? I mean, it is always under development. So yeah, so those things are important when it comes to tech implementations.
Yeah, super. I'm just going to wind back to, obviously, what we end up discussing. It is a big problem to solve. There's no one tool available right now. There's a lot of thinking that needs to be done up front, as in whether it's compliance tool or contract management or any tech tool. Shashwat, we probably already know the answer to this, but I know something that's you're very passionate about is the whole subject of ESG, which has become a very critical part of the general counsel role today, which just adds to what we've been discussing. The compliance, if whether we want to call it burden or responsibility, keeps growing and growing and growing. ESG is a new kind of mammoth kind of subject that's put onto the GC folder, meaning more compliance issues to manage. To what extent do you think the tech solution is growing at a similar kind of pace to the compliance burden that's coming onto GCs? And how are you managing the kind of ESG issue at the moment?
Yeah, firstly, I think ESG is a new form of new terminology, but if you really go back and check, G is the governance piece, the corporate governance piece, which has already been talked about largely. The S part of it is, of course, the social aspect is more focus which you're seeing. Of course, the bigger piece is the environmental aspect which is being talked about. So, of course, all of those conversations were there in different aspects, but now I think we have a very integrated approach from all the stakeholders of broader ESG. So larger ESG of course has its own governance program, its own policies, frameworks, and tech and all. But if we take a step back and just try to focus on the compliance aspect, the compliance aspect, while form part of the governance element, right? But there is a different thought process as to see how the reporting can be done differently, right? The boards or shareholders, stakeholders may ask, oh, just give me the ESG compliance and ESG risk. So how do we actually use the current compliance management tools which can focus on ESG compliance and risk? I'm not talking about the larger the ESG, because the larger ESG consists not only about the compliance and the risk, but it also consists about the overall program, the communications, the initiatives, and more importantly, the data around it. I mean, you just try to measure the metrics and reporting, back to the stakeholders. The non-financial aspects of the business, the non-financial parameters and the metrics are reported back. So if you see, from a large ESG standpoint, again, it's pretty broad. So I'm trying to first cover the compliance aspect. So one of the things what can be done is, with respect to the mapping of the compliances, I think just need to add an additional layer on the top, wherein all the the legal compliances and all can be under the governance, for example, the Companies Act and economic laws and all. I think when it comes to the social, I think all of those sexual harassment, HR laws, and some of the one second. And some of these the internal policies and all can be mapped under the social aspect of it, and a lot of the environmental laws and other things can be mapped under the environmental aspect, including some of the policies and guidelines and internal stuff. I mean, I've alluded on those points as to compliance as a broader definition, and I think that will possibly give a overall ESG compliance the report, so which will be part of a larger ESG reporting and all framework. From a ESG compliance standpoint, I think that is one area which we can shape it up.
Yeah. Let's kind of wrap up point, Shashwat. How are you, whether it's Provigil or the tech kind of industry, how are we kind of dealing with major compliances that just come onto the kind of in-house department? Is it something like you think we're just not ready to deal with that because we're already dealing with other compliance issues and trying to figure out the right tool, and you kind of think let the in-house department business just figure this out themselves because the tech isn't going to move at the same pace as all the compliances that are coming through?
So, I mean, our approach to compliance personally has been a little conservative, right? I mean, we believe that we are in very, very early stages of even trying to automate and make it really make a tool something which is very, very self-sufficient for a business, right? So we've been making small progress, right? I mean, where our approach has been to work with a partner who specializes in compliance services, right, and have deep domain expertise with compliance. And we are trying to build the right tech tools around, that domain expertise, right? So rather than trying to solve the domain expertise from scratch, right? I mean, where our focus then is on giving the right vessel in which that is consumed, right? The right technology infrastructure for that consumption, right? But again, just to give you my larger thesis, right? I mean, we are a legal tech company. We pretty much do everything under the board in legal, right? Whether it's disputes, contracts, IP, right, and compliance, right? And if you ask me the longer term view for the company, right? I mean, compliance management is GRC, right? Governance, risk, and compliance, right? Is one of the this is one of the areas where we are excited the most, right? I mean, I think the world that we will look at in the next 10 years, right, where more and more businesses will be global, right? More and more businesses, there will be a genuine effort on part of the governments to simplify the compliance and regulatory infrastructure, right? A lot of services will go digital. So like we file our taxes online today, a lot of government filings will also happen online, right? So there is going to be a lot of digital infrastructure, right, globally, where it will become easier for businesses to do global businesses, set up global businesses, right? And in that case, technology providers who have a global global understanding and a global product, right? There is a huge opportunity in this space, right? And we are extremely bullish on that, right? And so we're building slowly on it, right? I mean, there is a lot of work to do, right? The kind of things that we do, I mean, whether it is litigation, contracts, there's so much for us to do in each of these areas, right? That we know that there is 2 decades of work ahead of us, and we are gnawing at it slowly, right? I mean, chewing at it slowly, right? But I think the future is digital, right? For like most other things with compliance, right? Both from government and businesses becoming more and more digital. It is going to the technology layer that sits in between is going to be very important, right? And that is what we want to build. But again, that's a longer term view, right? Right now, I think our approach has been to marry with a service provider who has expertise and bring in our technology, which can then aid the business, right? So that's been our approach. That's how we are taking it for now, right? But again, very bullish on the need and what compliance management systems will be able to do for companies in the future.
Okay, super. We're just kind of hours gone already, and I know it's late for Shashwat in Singapore. I mean, it's a great conversation. I think it sounds like we're still very early days in solving the kind of compliance management tools. One key advice I think both of you are giving that as an in-house counsel, be very on top of the game in terms of understanding what you want and why you want it. So define that roadmap of what kind of tool, what kind of problem statement you're essentially solving for the business when it comes to compliance. And don't simply jump at bringing a compliance tool in for the sake of it, because it probably won't work for the business, and then which then leads you into kind of further issues down the road. And like Shashwat was saying, we're still trying to figure out, the tech part first, because compliance is moving at such a rapid rate, and tech is still evolving to catch up with the compliance issues and compliance kind of responsibilities coming on businesses. Just before we sign off, we do have one question which I want to put to the panel. So it's Ramandeep Datta. It's in the Q&A section. What parameters do multinational companies consider while looking for a service provider? And also for international geographies, how does the company manage the understanding of non-English speaking stakeholders at their end in order to be on the same page of some compliance execution? Not an easy question to answer, but I think, Shashwat, let's you have a crack at that first.
That is better place to answer this one, right? I mean,
no, I didn't get a issue around non-English aspect. This is something new aspect, and that's a good question. I mean, I never encountered a situation wherein we had to ask technology players, do we have or the language conversion abilities in Mandarin and all. But I think that's a good Very good question. For example, let's say, in a factory, remote place, I mean, the local languages, are needed. But my view is that I think if you see, there are a lot of tools which are coming up, which is doing auto conversion, and a lot of language conversion abilities are already there. So I don't think so that would be such a big challenge for Shashwat or any other player to bring in this language aspect, is my view, because I think they've crossed a lot of those technology barriers. But I think, some of, coming to the first question, what are some of the aspects which multinational companies look? I will share a couple of wish list as well. I mean, I also wanted to share thoughts of how the future tool can look like. Of course, they need a cost efficient tool with with a great interface, right? And solve all the problems, not only within the geographies, and also cover the multi-national laws as well, because some of the players do say, what, we just only focus on India, and you need to partner up with someone else, or get in a law firm to get to international. Like, that creates an issue. But in MNC, you just want a holistic solution from one player for all the compliances across the laws and all of that stuff. I think some of the wish list, also with some of the multinational companies, over a period of time, is as follows. I already talked about contractual compliance, policies, and all. Embed that. Ethics and compliance is something there. They don't want too many tools, right? Today, for annual disclosures, conflict of interest, there is a separate tool. For a whistleblower program and all, there is a separate tool, right? For compliance trainings, again, you have a separate e-learning and all of that stuff, right? And they need more of a data analysis as well. I mean, there's a lot of data, so bring in some of the more analytics into that. So I think the overall approach in future would be, give me a holistic, integrated, tool. Shashwat, you may be surprised that someday, the organizations may come and say, we don't want so many tools. We don't want to compliance ke liye one tool, risk ke liye alag, ESG alag, and all. They will say, just give me one tool which is integrated, which covers all the elements, which is focusing towards the same objective. Any of the tools which is working towards one objective, which is mitigating risk, which is enhancing the value and all those objectives, we'll all talk about, give me a one tool. So it is absolutely important for the tech partners to start visualizing the future, and accordingly work around to give a much more holistic tool. Again, this is something for you to really think from a future standpoint.
We're in the session there. I think we had a bit of an internet glitch. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next session. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.